Hey guys, Buckeye Bar guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Today's date is Saturday, May 29th, and big show today. Got some interesting, not so much, a lot of recruiting stuff came out yesterday.
Yeah.
So from Mark Pantoni. So that's kind of going to be the football portion, and then some of the stuff in regards to things from earlier in the week that involve the football team, but a lot of things that Gene's been involved with. So good to talk about some little different things that maybe we don't hit on a whole bunch. So looking forward to that. All right. So before we get going, everything good? We good? Everything's
good week, Memorial Day weekend, so everyone gets an extra day off. Hopefully everyone gets an extra day off on Monday. Me personally, I am on vacation for the next week, so I'm going to be living that up, which means I'm going to be cleaning.
Cleaning and
house stuff for a week,
getting house stuff done. Yeah, we had a really good week, and then it's like, hey, late fall's back here. You think that we're getting ready to kick off against Michigan right now? How
the
weather feels?
It's cold, it's crappy outside. It's raining like crazy, but it'll pass. It's gonna be fine.
I'm like, are we getting ready for the end of the Halloween weekend, Penn State weekend?
Right, I know you always get terrible weather that weekend.
So, but yeah. All right, so Mark Pantoni, he had a press conference yesterday. He was talking about basically, they're getting ready to dead period's ending finally. It's only been 18 months or whatever the heck. I mean, he said basically it feels like it's been 2 years.
Realistically, yeah.
So they're finally going to get kids on campus. They have a huge month planned, the month of June. He joked in the press conference that his phone will be turned off in July, and nobody's going to be able to find him. So, because it's the biggest that they've ever had in 1 month. I mean, they're basically and I forgot her last name, but they also introduced her name's Erin. She's replacing Tori Major's position. She was kind of the girl that pretty much the staff member that kind of was, I would say maybe kind of feels like the concierge between the recruits and the football program.
Yeah.
Did all the bringing them around, showing them the campus. She was basically kind of a communications person. I'm sure there's other stuff. Not trying to poo-poo on what their job is. I know Tori did a bunch of stuff, and it sounds Erin's taking her spot.
Erin Dunstan.
So they introduced her. It was her first press conference. So she had a lot of good things. She's keeping kind of the track of the numbers. She said they right now have like 51 official visits scheduled for the month of June, but when you count the people that they believe are coming in unofficially, it's going to be somewhere between 150 to 200 kids. So, I mean, it's going to be a huge month then.
Yeah, well, and I think they had even said official visits are typically anywhere from like high 40s to low 60s for a year, and they're matching that in 1 month. So, but you haven't been able to do it for 2 years, so you got to get people in there.
Yeah, and, we'll talk about JTT here in a minute. So, they got 21 kids still. I mean, they still have possible 21 kid. He's coming in. You got a whole bunch of 22 kids, and then you got 23 and 24 kids that are, coming in to do camps and stuff. So, sounds like they got a big month of planned for that. So basically, they're pretty much, Mark started with his first question is how excited they are, nervous, and, how's all that? And he said that, they're super excited because it's truly been basically 2 years since they've had kids on campus.
Right.
It would be different to, not have to do all Zoom meetings and stuff. And, so yeah, they're super excited. He's happy, but he said, he mentioned this multiple times during the press conferences is that, they have to be super organized and, because, they almost have to hit kind of a home run out of the park. I mean, these are going to be such condensed visits
Right.
and they're going to be, a lot of these kids have to make a decision by December. And so where you would think you would have, a lot of times when you think about a football season, they can spread out official visits from, they do official visits during late winter, during basketball games. They do official visits during spring football. They do official visits through the summer, and then they do official visits in the
They come
fall.
during games too.
And you can only do one official visit, and, local kids that live regionally, they can come in a little bit more for unofficial visits.
Right, or kids that, are actually in the backyard regionally, like you said, but you got those Columbus kids that are on campus all the time at games.
So, you can get those kids on campus a lot more, but, this is your first shot, and this is your one major shot to get for an official visit, these kids, especially from outside the region, to really get them, bring out all the bells and whistles, roll the red carpet out. So this is a much more condensed type of thing. And he's like, a lot of these kids, we don't know if we're ever going to really get back on campus again. So it is going to be, you got to hit a home run. You got to be prepared. Everything's got to be organized. And it sounds like from the press conference that they are, pretty, they got a pretty good game plan down. They said the younger kids, the 23 kids, the 24 kids, they pretty much have them coming in. They have like 6 one-day camps planned for the month.
Yeah.
So they're all coming in throughout the weeks to, do camps. And then the 22 kids, the official visits are going to be scheduled on the weekends to where, they can coaches can basically be divided up better. You do your camps during the week with the 23 kids, and then you can spend quality time with the 22 kids on the weekends.
Well, I mean, and that helps that you're going to break it down like that. I don't know. Are you worried? Cause how some of these kids can be not saying anyone has too big of a head on their shoulders or anything like that, but you want to feel special when you're doing this. Like you want to make sure it's a good fit. You want to make sure that team is completely committed to you. Do you feel nervous at all that when you got so much going on, you're not going to be able to give that special attention to a kid?
Yeah, I do. I think that they are, when you think about official visits that happen in a normal situation, that you usually have a couple big name kids in on any given period, but it's only a couple. You're not, if you think about it, you're taking 51 for the entire month. I mean, that's got to be, and there's only 4 weekends in the month. So, there's basically 10 plus that obviously seems like must be coming in every weekend. And, so, that's a lot of people that, you really are trying to spread attention to. And then, Mark kind of somebody brought up a thing, Mark kind of sidestepped the question, because, you don't want to, somebody asked him, are you concerned maybe about kids that, you're not ready to accept an official visit or a commitment from, that, they're just going to outright love it so much and they're just ready to commit, and, he said, yeah, those are concerns, we've talked about stuff like that, but we want the kids to take their visits. If they're going to commit to us, we sit them down and be like, hey, we don't really, we want this to be your school. You obviously go pick the school that you want to go to, but, we're not just a holding spot neither that, hey, I'm going to commit to Ohio State and then I'm going to go commit next week to Clemson.
Right.
And so, if you're serious about committing, you need to be serious about committing, and, which is a right approach to it. Obviously they've never been one of these universities that, if they go take official visits somewhere else, they automatically pull the scholarship.
No, yeah.
But, that's a kind of a good approach to take to it. And I think that probably is maybe a concern. Maybe somebody that's, a number 2 or a number 3 or 4 on a board where, they really want to hold it out a little longer for whoever their number 1 or 2 on the board is, that if those guys are ready to commit, do they accept that commitment knowing that could affect their guy, So, that's always stuff that that staff, the coaching staff, they always have to, they've always done a fairly good job with that stuff,
Well, I'm confident because a lot of these guys came here under Urban Meyer, and I'm not taking anything away from Ryan Day, his approach. I mean, obviously, Ryan Day has shown that he has his own recruiting chops, and he can handle himself on the field, and he handles himself very well as a coach. But, I mean, like, Mark Pantoni, he comes from Urban Meyer. Like, that's, I don't know if Urban Meyer knows how to work, and if he's not overwhelmed, like he knows how to succeed under pressure, and he kind of like put that on everyone else. And I think just knowing the guys that they have recruiting, I mean, I'm a little, I'm cautious too. I'm a little worried that you got just too many going on at one time, but you also got, Tony Alford out there. You got Brian Hartline out there, Coach Washington, Coach Johnson. So these are all to go with Ryan Day being out there. So these are all guys that have shown that they can, close the deal. And I'm confident they can make it work. It's a lot to go at once, but they got to get the kids on campus. Like you said, they got to knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
It's got to be home runs.
And both Mark and Aaron both said a couple times during the press conference, it was brought up that, Coach Day has been extremely involved in this whole process about making sure that they have a game plan going forward, what the presentation is going to look like. So I think Ryan definitely has a lot of, he definitely learned under Irvin, he's learned under Chip. So he's seen how to, do some of this stuff himself. Urban had a very, very regimented approach to how he did a lot of this stuff. And I think Day obviously picked up a lot of that. Hopefully he can spread his stress levels out a little bit better than Urban could,
yeah.
But, at the end of the day, I think he learned from the best when it comes to, top two guys when it comes to recruiting, so.
Coach Day doesn't look like he's going full-blown gray yet, so.
Yeah.
But it's typically, I think it's usually after like the third year that it starts setting in. I mean, he is a little bit younger than where Trussell and Urban were when they started off with Ohio State, though.
And then Mark, he brought up, he just said, again, they got to stay organized, and the goal for the month of June is win each day individually because, they got to kind of take with this many kids kind of coming in, they got to take that approach that, they got to look at each. You can't think about the next day who you got coming in when you got the level of talent you got coming in for, this month. And, he said it is a kind of a battle because they're behind in scouting on 22 kids, but, so you got to show the same amount of love for the 23 kids because they're kind of on time for those classes, but they're kind of behind on the 22 recruiting. So, in kind of a way, you still had the Zoom calls, you still had other things. He did say, somebody asked him if he was worried about kids that didn't get to play football this year. And he said most of the kids that they are recruiting did play seasons this year. And he actually said in a weird way that it kind of, the fact that some of those states actually played spring football kind of, it actually kind of balanced his year out a little bit better.
He didn't have
to watch as many films.
Right. You didn't have to watch 20 kids in one day. You could watch,
a
couple spread it out here and there.
Yeah. So, and they asked him how kind of the pandemic, how it kind of changed him. And he said he did a lot more college scouting this year than he's done ever before. That normally it's only high school scouting, but he did opponent scouting for the team during the fall. He said he actually got a book together kind of now for possible transfer portal kids that, he takes notes on people and, but he did say somebody asked him if they're going to start holding spots open for possible transfers. He's like, nope, it's going to be business as usual because you always have the amount of attrition as you're going to have. So yeah, they'll have kids leave the program and they'll fill those spots with transfer kids.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So, when did the hit next? All right. So then the big focus then, different times during the early and then when they started really, when everybody got their first round of questions, and a lot of questions came in at the end about name, image, and likeness, which we're going to get to in a minute when we talk about Gene's press conference earlier in the week and the bill that that is get brought up in the state of Ohio. But they kind of asked him what the game plan about name, image, and likeness, and they said they have a game plan going forward. They got it on the presentation. They said probably about 30% of the presentation is dedicated to name, image, and likeness. A lot of parents, a lot of the recruits all have questions about it. So they expect that when you take everything from presentation to conversations, that it's probably going to be over 50% of the visit is probably going to be dealt with, name, image, and likeness. So, which is interesting. They, it's new to them, but they know it's coming, state of Ohio, I'm pretty sure is going to pass this. It sounds like it's going to get moved pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And, but even for some reason, if the state of Ohio wouldn't pass it, it's still coming down the pike. I mean, it's talked about now, possibly federally. The NCAA is going to move on it eventually. I mean, some of these states are not giving them the opportunity. And,
they're trying their best not to.
But I think maybe that's going to be their decision, is that they'll just they think this is going to be a big domino effect, and that, all states, no state wants their college. I mean, because that's such a thing of pride for most of these states that, and, that's one thing it seems like, both parties can agree on, that, we want our college football team, that's a state pride thing, and, the state next to us can't be better at it than our state. So,
I mean, good thing the, Northeast sucks at football anyways, because they would just get buried with that, with that mentality.
Yeah. So, it's coming sooner rather than later, but I mean, even then it's still coming. They said, they definitely have it in the presentations. They got, I thought a good point was brought up by, I believe it was Jeremy Birmingham out of Leonard Monroe. And it's kind of something I thought about too at different times, even though I'm very much pro name, image, and likeness, because I think these kids do deserve to be paid something. I've always said I don't know necessarily if I agree it should be the university handing out checks to them. I think their scholarship stipends on that part of it is a good thing that they're getting, and you get a scholarship and then you get stipends. Maybe you got to bump the stipends up a little bit, but I've always felt like it's kind of unfair that they're not allowed to hold jobs, and they're also not really allowed I've always said if a car dealership wants to pay somebody $500, $1,000 to come do autographs for 2 hours, then who cares? I mean, I thought this is the United States, and
right,
if some crazy person wants to pay me $1,000 to do something, I'm allowed to do something like, there's nothing stopping me from doing that. So why should that stop them? Because they're signed a piece of paper that, we're already giving you a scholarship. I mean, these kids, you're making billions off of these kids. So,
right.
I think this is the easiest way to give these kids a piece of the pie without not having to actually cut them checks. And, so I'm pro that, but I have wondered, I'm like, how does that kind of affect personal relationships? I mean, part of a lot of the recruiting is, it's never been, hey, come to Ohio State because, we have this corporate sponsor and this corporate sponsor and this corporate sponsor, and we're going to be able to spread out all 85 of you guys are going to get a piece of this.
Right.
I mean, maybe Justin Fields might get a little bit more, but, you're going to get some money too, because you still play for Ohio State, and, this is one of the fastest growing areas in the country, and we can spread the wealth out, better than a lot of places can. And, recruiting's always been about, you build relationships with parents and families and kids. And, so I've been worried about that. And, Mark, I think, basically say, hey, we're going to play everybody is going to be, it's going to be a situation by situation type thing. We think that, and there's only a few handful of teams in the country that when you take everything into consideration that can really compete with them on that.
So, I mean, I agree with all of this, and I think it is a good thing. And I think, like you said, it's probably the easiest way to, get the kids happy, get them, at least a little bit of a piece of the pie. You talk about, and what Jeremy Birmingham brought up was like, lack of, that personal connection that, now is like being about the money you can earn instead of who you're playing for, or, the brotherhood that is such a big deal of Ohio State and the recruiting of Ohio State. Now for me, and maybe this is just like a silly idea, and like I said, I agree with name, image, and likeness. Do you think there could ever be a chance that some like jealousy or something plays a part in this, though, that, could get a kid in trouble in another way. So let me give you an example. Chris Olave, he gets X amount of dollars to be sponsor for so-and-so's Nissan down the street or whatever. Garrett Wilson does not get that same deal. Garrett Wilson's unhappy, decides, hey, you know what? I'm transferring to Texas where I'm going to be the man next year, and I'm going to get, Austin, whoever their dealership is going to pay me X amount of dollars to be their spokesperson. And then Joe Blow, alumnus says, hey, you know what? I'll make up the difference. I'll cut you a check for X amount of dollars. And now you put Ohio State in this, to keep this kid happy, keep him at school because he was getting overlooked and he doesn't think he should have. Now, you're running into the same sort of risk that you were running into before.
Yeah. A part of that, yeah. I do think that there's some new issues that get brought up by this. And we'll bring this up a little bit here in a minute. So they hired this company, this Open Doors. They've retained them. It sounds like that a lot of the facilitation of deals are going to get I think Open Doors is going to bring in a lot of these things. So to me, this car dealership gives, we'll just say, hey, we want you to do to Chris Olave, come out for 2 appearances plus make a couple commercials and, $10,000 for the whole thing. We'll
right.
Say that. Well, then I think that's up to Open Doors then to be like to the car dealership that's across the street or to Kroger or whoever, hey, Garrett Wilson's available, $10,000, you guys got to match it, I think some of that stuff.
And the scenario might not be the best because of, the 2 guys I was talking about. Like, if Chris Olave is getting his from someone down the street, well, someone in the other direction, down the street, the same, the other direction, they're going to give Garrett Wilson a deal too. But when you're talking about maybe guys that are coming in and they're there for depth or they're not a huge part of the team right now.
Say it's Chris Olave against Abuka. So I would say that to Emeka, Chris Olave's been here for several years. That $10,000 deal that he just got, or whatever it's going to be, we'll just say 10,000. He's doing a couple appearances plus, a couple commercials and maybe a couple other things thrown in there. And maybe we can only get you something and you're making $1,000 this year. Well, keep with the program. If this was around when Chris was in, Chris would have been in the same situation.
Right.
As you. So, keep with the flow and guess what? You'll be making that deal here in a couple years too. So,
right.
And I think it's all about making some money for the younger kids. And then as you progress, I think, and you kind of explain to them like this is going to be no different. When you go on to if you go on to the next level, there's guys that make more money than other guys.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
So it's about having a part of the pie. Not everybody in the NFL makes the same salary. And so, part of it's on reputation and part of it is on then what you do. And,
and
initial contract,
you get sponsors or not.
And then the rest of it's sponsors and, initial contracts. Yeah. It's based on, what they think you can do. And then every contract after that is what
you can't do.
What you have done.
Right.
So
what you've proven yourself already.
So, and that's going to be no different here. The freshmen coming in, they're going to be getting money because some corporation, they just want an Ohio State guy there. And we'll give them this. Okay, great. And then if you become a star, then you're going to be seeing those deals that Chris Olave saw and Garrett Wilson seeing. You're going to see those in a couple years. Those will be your deals. So
yeah. And I mean, and like I said, I agree with you. It's more so like that might have been more devil's advocate than anything. I think it just needs to happen. It needs to play out because you need to see what little, nuances and things that you got to fix that you need to do or, how to tweak something or how things are going to play out. You got to let it play out before you know exactly, what you're getting or how to go about everything. I think it's going to be fine. And I still don't have any doubt that, at the end of the day, The guys are playing for A, the brotherhood, but B, to get to the NFL.
Yeah.
And that's always been, and I think that's been Ohio State's message greater than a lot of the other teams that, in college football. Like you see all the time that, Clemson kids come back for their fourth year, or like a bunch of Alabama guys came back for their fourth year last year. And then, championships, that is something to definitely be prideful. But I don't think kids, like playing for Ohio State less than they like playing for Clemson. I can't imagine that would be a thing. I think Ohio State is very truthful, and they're very, upfront with the approaches. Like, we want you to win us as many games as possible in 3 years, as long as you're good enough to go to the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we'll actually move on to this now. I touched on all the major points from the press conference. You want to talk anything else about recruiting before we move on, like to name and mention?
The only thing from recruiting is I saw a lot of people are a little worried about JT Tuimoloau going to Alabama being his last visit. Yeah. That is worrisome, of course, because Nick Saban, it's a joke, but it's kind of true. When Nick wants, Nick gets. So that's scary that he's at the end there. But I also would say to everyone, remember, JT Tuimoloau isn't coming from Tennessee. He's not coming from Alabama. He's not coming from Texas, Florida, Georgia, wherever. Like, he's not a Southern kid that is so, darn hard to pull out from the South when it comes to that. He's coming from Washington. So I think, like, regionally, he's still up in the air. And also, and it's a little bit different circumstances, because I think Emeka Egbuka, was kind of last minute, or was I need to see Norman just to make sure I'm set with Columbus. But it happened with him too, that, he went to Oklahoma and he's still committed to Ohio State. So the same thing could happen. JTT could just be going to Tuscaloosa just to make sure, I have to give these guys the respect. They're Alabama. Larry Johnson still has me one, though, and it can still play out that way.
Yeah. All right. So name, image, and likeness. So as we started hitting on this here at the end of what they were talking about in the press conference. So they had a press conference earlier in the week. Now, I didn't get to watch the press conference. I saw a bunch of I saw some snippets of it. But basically it was the the legislator that was introducing the bill into the state government, and Gene Smith up there. And they did this presentation together, this press conference together. And the first thing I just thought of was and I told you, and I told some other people that, wow, that's basically Ohio State University. They just basically said, we're sponsoring, we're a co-sponsor to this bill.
Yes.
That they went all in this week and said that, yeah, we're supportive of this. And not only are we supporting this, but when you introduce the bill, let's do it here. And, let's have, the athletic director for the program for the whole university up there with you. So I thought that was kind of a ballsy thing. Then it's yeah, all right, this is the new age of college football, and we're not going to be behind. The Big Ten might be behind some of the situations.
I think this is a theme we're going to keep revisiting throughout this particular show that we're doing today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's Ohio State can't get left behind. Yeah. They can't. They're a team that legitimately can compete for a national title every year. They got to be at the forefront of this.
Yeah. So, and that's what I saw. That's the image I saw that I'm that's a shot across all the other Big Ten schools, and any other school. That's a shot at Oklahoma and Texas. But hey, everybody, we're getting on board on this, and our state government's going to support us on this. And this is going to get signed. Nobody in this is going to get passed overwhelmingly in both houses of Congress down in Columbus. And it's going to get passed, and DeWine's going to sign off on it, because this is a good bill. And when you think about just all the craziness that this last year has been about whether these guys have done the right thing, the wrong thing, and all the bickering back and forth about everything, well, here's a good thing. Everything's kind of coming to an end, and you know what? And then we're going to leave the note on, yeah, we support our university, and so, yeah, we're going to pass this bill. And,
right.
And they're going to pass it. It's going to get passed. And it'll be passed by July 1st, like they said it's going to get passed by. And so I just think the fact that Gene was up there, and then Ryan Day comes out, I think it was a day later, and talks about it, and they say that, they've signed on this open doors, and, that's who they've retained. And so they're moving full blown into this.
You have to.
Like it's already a done deal. And so,
well, when you got 50 kids coming on campus in June, you want them to know you are all about this.
Yeah. So, and it made me really think, and, and Mark brought this up in the press conference, there's only a handful of schools. And really when you think about, and Gene brought this up in their press conference, that some people asked, he was kind of brought up the competitive balance. Will this help competitive balance? And he said, and Mark kind of said that, it's too early to tell on some of this stuff, but Gene kind of said that he really didn't think it's going to help competitive balance. It could actually kind of push it the other way.
Yeah.
And, and Mark kind of brought it up that there's only a handful of schools that can really compete with Ohio State. And when you look at so usually all your universities are either in really small college towns,
right,
or they're in big cities. The problem with the big cities is most of them have major pro sports teams, and nothing against the Blue Jackets or the Crew. It's just,
they're not the Buckeyes.
They're not the Buckeyes. And maybe if Ohio State University was in city of Cleveland or in the city of Cincinnati, and maybe Cincinnati's a little different, even though the Reds are beloved down there. The Bengals, I mean, I know Bengal fans are going to hate it.
They love their Bengals.
I think the Bengals.
Trust me, I went to college with enough of them. They love their Bengals.
It just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the same passion as it is for the Browns. And, but maybe the Reds are a better passion than the Indians. So,
I think that would be a fair statement.
So I think that's probably a fair statement, But I think if it was in either two of those cities, if Ohio State, which is the state university of the state of Ohio, was located in Cleveland or in Cincinnati, two of the three biggest other big cities in the state, that it might be a different deal because you have the corporations in both those cities have pro athletes that they can also kick it to. City of Columbus doesn't have that. And now when you mix the Blue Jackets and the Crew are going to find out real quick that when you throw Ohio State in the mix, that there are going to be literally corporations that are going to be like, yeah, I'd rather have Justin Fields.
Right. Buckeyes are going to be number one.
I want Justin Fields to be my sponsor. I mean, that's nice. The Blue Jacket guy. I mean, or, one of the big guys from the Crew, but yeah, I'd rather have Justin Fields.
But out of like when it comes down to advertisements and who you want to be your spokesperson, probably the least desirable out of pro sports, when you're talking about team sports, are probably hockey players and professional soccer players. So it's kind of like the perfect storm for them.
And I know soccer's getting more popular in the United States every year, but it's still not the big three in the United States. So Cincinnati has two of the big three. Cleveland has all of the big three. So, like, basically you don't have any of the big three in Columbus. And when you look around major cities around the country, that's not the case in a lot of them. When you think of a couple, Austin's really the only one that comes to mind. The major metropolitan.
That's who I thought of too.
So that's it on the big cities. And I'm probably missing some, but out of the two elite college football programs that are basically control their big cities, those are the two you think of: Ohio State and Texas.
Yeah.
So you have that situation. Now you got Columbus, which is, a top 10 growing market in the whole country.
Right.
I mean, it's the biggest city in the state of Ohio now. It's the biggest suburban area in the state of Ohio now. I mean, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of businesses in that geographical area, which are not even taken into the other population centers in the state of Ohio. There are going to be businesses in the city of Cleveland that be like, well, maybe I want an Ohio State guy too.
Yeah, right.
So so you have different things going for you there that I think the competitive balance, when you look at now the small cities or some of these small towns where some of these other universities are located, Alabama's Alabama. They're going to get what they're going to get, but
Alabama wasn't Alabama until Nick Saban got there though.
Yeah,
well, they were a long time ago.
Yeah, but they are, they have a lot of passion there.
Sure.
I wonder how Clemson is going to do in this new world, because Clemson, South Carolina is a small town. They don't have the fan base that Alabama has. They don't have the fan base that some of the other SEC schools have in that regards. Like Florida has a huge fan base. Gainesville's a very smaller community. It's one of those, small Southern college schools. I mean, how is Clemson going to handle in this situation? Like,
but what will they get in the state of South Carolina? Like, and I that's an honest question, because I don't know how the state, obviously there's Gamecocks fans there. Obviously there's Tiger fans there. I don't know who's more popular in the state, though. Like, that's an honest thing. Like, I seriously don't know that.
And it's a very transient area too. And when you get out closer to the coast, like,
right,
they just have a lot of fans. There are a lot of teams. So, I mean, how do you, I think you got a lot better situations for Ohio State than you do for South Carolina or for Clemson.
Shoot, Coastal Carolina is going to be the big dog soon.
Who knows? I mean,
but kind of like going into what you're saying, like, move Ohio State University to Dayton. Not a tiny city by any means, but not the same as Columbus. So, I mean, how this is playing out is like Ohio State, it's kind of like the perfect storm for name, image, and likeness for them, because huge brand, huge city that's, passionate, and state that's passionate about football, but you don't have the competition,
the pro competition
in Columbus.
Which, and the only other city that you can even throw a comparison to in the Big Ten country is Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for Minnesota, because East Lansing's not as the Lansing area is not as big a city as either Columbus or Minneapolis. And everybody else is in smaller towns. And, I mean, Bloomington's semi close to Indianapolis, but
they got the pro sports teams there.
Yeah, they got the pro team, and Minneapolis has the pro sports
team. The big
team.
three.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just
Timberwolves play over there, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea where the Timberwolves play.
They actually have 4, because they have the hockey team. So they actually have 4 major pro sports.
And actually hockey's marketable in Minnesota.
So, I mean, Madison's a big city, and Wisconsin, they might get some, that's the other
That's
city.
a good one, yeah.
Madison's actually, it's the capital, and I was thinking about it. Wisconsin, they might get a boost from stuff like that. I mean, football's a little different there, but football's loved, and, the corporations in Madison, actually, that might help Wisconsin.
I guess the whole Wisconsin thing is, like, that has to be the draw to start getting these guys, because, like, I'm looking back at Wisconsin players that, when they're on campus, it's kind of like, Wisconsin's always kind of like that doubted, underrated team, and they just thrive on that. And they have such a good system that works for them. I'm just thinking of, like, who's really marketable for the University of Wisconsin. But like J.J. Watt, like, he would have been a great one. Russell Wilson for a year, he would have been a great one. So
Mertz now, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you do have the guys there. It's just when you look at, like, the talent, the star power you get into Columbus every year.
Yeah.
That it's guys that live up to their potential instead of, doing more than what they're supposed to do.
And Madison's not a growing city like Columbus is.
No.
But, like Michigan, Ann Arbor, they're going to have to do it completely on the reputation of Michigan football.
Well, they recruit the Northeast anyway, so they recruit New England.
Penn State, I mean, yeah, there's a rabid fan base there, but Happy Valley is a small area, and, there is nothing around Happy Valley.
Right.
So, I mean, a mom and pop store, if you're Micah Parsons, and maybe this is because, Ohio, he would have went to Ohio State, but he went to Penn State. If the mom and pop shop in Happy Valley to Micah Parsons, well, they're not going to be able to offer the same that somebody, a business in Columbus, Ohio is going to get to offer. And they're going to be like, come to Columbus, come to play for Ohio State, and you can come sponsor us, and we'll pay you this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, there's so much that's going for Ohio State with this. And that's why you gotta be on the front lines of this to get it rolling, because one, you gotta stay competitive. You're ready. I mean, Ohio State is more than competitive. So I don't want to say, like, they're on the cusp. Like, Ohio State any of these years could have won the national title.
Oh, yeah,
so
exactly.
They're right there every year. You can't get left behind because the rest of the Big Ten is willing to.
Yeah.
You have to be the one. If you got to be, the big dog out there, if you got to, flex your muscles and say, hey, you guys do what you want. I'm competing for national titles, though. This is a national brand. We're not just trying to be the best team in the Midwest. They're going to do it, and they need to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, and I wonder how much, I know Ohio State's brought in this open doors and stuff, but I really wonder until maybe we get some rules and stuff down, because I think all these states are going to pass this. Maybe the federal government will pass it. And then finally the NCAA will eventually come in and maybe put in some of the rules in place. Because the first several years of this, I'm wondering how much of the Wild West is this really going to be? Are we going to actually have, because now these corporations who know, like these guys that normally these used to be dollar handshakes, here's an envelope. Now that they own, a lot of these guys own businesses and stuff that can do this. Now are they going to just go to these guys and be like, yeah, come to Ohio State or come to Alabama, and instead of me giving you the $5,000 in envelope, I'll give you the $5,000 legally.
I'll write you a check to, sponsor my company or be my spokesman.
So I wonder how much of that will actually go around. And, it's a lot harder to trace conversations than it is to trace money. And so, how's the NCAA going to stop something like that, which could be a much bigger black hole to fall into when you got guys now just promising stuff and,
When the money is allowed to have a paper trail, what are they going to do? It's going to be, it'll be legally. You're going to have to pay taxes on it and all that stuff, but it's nothing illegal to the guy. I'm not giving you a McDonald's bag full of dollar bills now. Now I'm writing you a check.
I have a McDonald's franchise, so you'll come we'll do a sponsor.
You're going to sit out there with the clown, you shake some hands, and we'll get you a check at the end of the day.
Yeah, so I wonder how, and I just just bringing up that situation with Micah Parsons and, the mom and pop pizza shop and nothing against a pizza shop in Happy Valley and that area of Pennsylvania, but when they can only offer so much, but whoever's some of these car dealerships in Columbus or Kroger or somebody that, has a huge presence and we'll give you this much money for as long as you're at Ohio State, you get to be a sponsor here, and I'll pay you so-and-so every year.
I mean, the good thing about places like Penn State, which Ohio State has this going for it as well, though, is just how beloved the sport and the team are in the entire state.
Yeah, they have a brand and stuff, so that helps them too. And so, and those were just situations, but there's going to be situations now when Ohio State and Penn State are both going for a 5-star kid that if that is something, that is an extra thing in Ohio State's category that maybe Penn State at the end of the day couldn't offer because there's more, you might have to go a little farther for that money in Pennsylvania than you would have to go in Columbus.
Yes.
And, it's just, I don't know. It'll just be interesting until some of the rules and regulations maybe get in place down the road, how some of this stuff is gonna,
agreed.
How it's gonna happen.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I'm excited about it. Like I said, I mean, I think, and the reason why I'm excited about it is because I know Ohio State's going to do well in this situation. And it's just going to it's not going to be a competitive advantage because,
not for anyone else.
Maybe, when you think about maybe somebody else in the Big Ten, maybe in Indiana, maybe a Purdue, maybe in Iowa, maybe they could get a 1-5 where they have a hard time getting a 5-star.
Right.
And maybe they could get a 5-star just because, or a high 4-star just because they can at least be like, you're going to be our focal point. So everything we're going to just funnel to you. But how does that, where Ohio State be like, okay, but we can funnel a lot to a lot more people.
Right.
So we'll concede maybe that loss. Maybe you'll pull one because you can now offer somebody something so extravagant, but we're going to be all still build such a great team around, this whole thing because we can just funnel the cash.
And at the end of the day, you got to hope it's not a person that you are, you really want on your team. And maybe at the end of the day, if a team like that pulls that kid, that's just taking away from competition you're going to be playing at the end of the day for a national title. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely, it can help people get a star on their team and, win some games. I mean, if Kent State, and I'm probably a bad example, but they get a 4-star to come to their school because
don't crucify the flashes, man.
Because they got, whatever XYZ businesses around that they can use to promote to these kids that they can get, they can get money because they can do commercials, be sponsors, whatever. And maybe Kent State can win a couple more MACs because of it.
Well, and that's also another interesting point when and I mean, I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole. This actually, when you think about competitive balance, it actually might, in a weird way, help a Kent State more than it will help an Iowa. Because, you know, if there is a kid that's a 4-star kid in Northeast Ohio that doesn't really want to leave, I mean, we'll say Ohio State's not really recruiting them.
Yeah.
You know, they're a 4-star kid, and maybe it's between Cincinnati, Michigan State. Well, I don't want to really go down to Cincinnati. I don't really want to go to Michigan State. I can go to the NFL from Kent State,
Right.
And, you know, or I can go to the NFL from Akron.
I can dominate the MAC for a couple years, and I'll go to the NFL.
And maybe Goodyear is going to be like, well, go to Akron, and we'll pay you this.
Yeah, right.
First Energy will be like, go to Akron, and we'll pay you this. And, you know, I mean, there are corporations in this area that could say that to kids. And so that is interesting where somebody could go to one of those MAC level group of 5 schools because that's where the competitive balance might help some of those schools, because now they can pull in maybe a 1 or 2 4-star kids that they never would have gotten before, you know, and that might take away from, you know, a Michigan State or from an Iowa that, you know, they're going to come in, one of these other Big Ten schools are going to come into Ohio because Ohio State doesn't want a kid, you know, and well, I don't really want to leave. I can just as easily, if I'm a good enough player and if I believe in myself, I can just as easily get to the NFL playing from Kent State as I can from Indiana. So, you know, why go all the way to Bloomington when I can still see my parents all through the week. I can still see my family, my friends, and I'll just go 20 minutes down the road, go to Kent.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, you got more about the press conference you want to talk about? I know, like, Gene, and I don't know if it was this press conference or if it was one last week. I can't remember. He said, though, didn't he say he's all for expanding the playoffs with
and that was
automatic bids for the Power 5?
And that's sort of the next thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah. So Gene, it's like Gene got his new contract extension, and now Gene's like, yeah, I'm
telling you, man, something when that nonsense went down last year, Ohio State decided, like, we're not some Big Ten school anymore. Like, we're going to show everyone we are the top guy in the Big Ten.
Yeah. So
it's time to flex.
Yeah. And, you know, I think maybe, and we'll get to that in a minute, maybe Gene finally maybe Drake wasn't that president. Maybe Gene finally has a president that's going to let him flex some.
Yeah.
So he can. Yeah, it was interesting that Gene, I mean, usually you don't get Ohio State's kind of stayed non-committal. I mean, I think Ryan Day has talked about maybe, you know, I know Urban always said he never wanted it expanded. Now, I think he last year came out on TV and said he think maybe it's finally a good idea.
Yeah.
But when he was coaching, he always said he didn't want it expanded. But it's now it's official. I mean, your athletic director has made this point and I think more and more schools are coming that way. And I mean, we kind of talked about it in the fall, or, you know, before the season came back, when we did our little Super League thing. And I've always said, I just think all these little things, they're just little dominoes now just falling. And we said that was we felt that was the first domino. And now I've seen some stuff over this last week where there's other dominoes that are falling. And I'm not saying that this is next year, but
right.
Is this 5-10 years down the road where we are going to get one of these super conferences because there's more money in that than playing at the end of the day, is there more money in that than playing in the Big Ten, which is giving them a lot of money, but everybody looks at what could the piece of the pie be?
Right. But I mean, focusing on the system we have now. So, I mean, what would that change to your out of conference schedule if there was no consequence in it? You know, how many years is Ohio State playing both Texas and Notre Dame, or, you know, USC and Alabama? How much money could be made if they are guaranteed, as long as you win the Big Ten, you're going to the playoff? Like, what? Because that's what scares a lot of these teams from scheduling, like, competitive out of conference, is you're not going to have a postseason if you lose these games.
And we talked about it last week where, you know, they moved the new home and home for Oregon's now in the 30s.
Yeah.
But maybe if this was the situation that all they had to do and all Oregon had to do were just win the Pac-12, win the Big Ten, and we're both in the playoffs, well, they maybe could have said, well, we can go out to Eugene. We can go out to Eugene in 2 years.
Right.
And we'll make it up in 2 years.
Yeah.
That game. Okay.
Well, that's what it's not. I mean, you're still going to get your paydays for your little schools for out of conference games, but you have the ability then to have more marquee out of conference matchups.
Oh.
If you were to say, hey, as long as you guys win the Big Ten, you get a chance to win a national title at the end of the year.
And maybe this is the way that you keep the current system.
This is how you keep away from a Super League.
Maybe then, because then you say, well, you can do 2 marquee matchups a year, and you can do then all your big conference games, and you can still schedule then your third out of conference game could be a Kent State or whoever, just like guaranteed.
Throw that person that guaranteed win, throw that team a bone.
And then you actually could hurt teams, and you think of an Ohio State's thing, if they're going to schedule 2 marquee matchups and stuff, where it actually then could hurt the Tulsas of the world. And
it does,
because
that's who it affects.
The third school is going to be an Ohio school. Been like, well, if we're going to give a bunch of money, we're going to give it to Kent, Akron, Ohio, Miami, Toledo. We're going to give it to an in-state school. And, because, that's the right thing to do. And, that's what they're going to do. And, so
maybe then with that being the situation, maybe it still breaks anyways, because then you have teams that they're not getting that money that they typically get to take their beat down.
Yeah. So, I agree with that. I think that's actually a good thing. If you could schedule an Alabama and a USC or whoever twice in a year, like, okay,
that's awesome.
We're going to Tuscaloosa and USC is coming here. And, if some reason we drop 2 games, well, you know what? All we have to do is go win the Big Ten, and we're good enough to go win the Big Ten.
Right.
And those 2 losses are just making us better to get ready for that playoff.
Exactly. Where you need to improve on. It's like, it's not consequential.
Yeah. So that's actually a good point. I could see that. And it would be great. And it just makes college football better because you get just another good game in there.
I mean, I get the purist. You're going to get her. Oh, well, they don't deserve to play for a national title. They lost 2 games during the season. Or they lost a game, but
whatever. The NFL, you lose games, and
exactly,
it still makes the season. These people that tell me that it's not going to make these, it's still just a 12-game season. You still got to win. You can't go drop 2 games in the Big Ten. I mean, if Ohio State drops 2 out of conference games and then goes Penn State and Michigan State or whoever, Indiana gets one of these crazy years where they finally upset them, and then they don't deserve to go play.
Right.
And they're probably not going to win the conference. So,
I mean, that's outlined to play for a national title. You need to win your conference. I mean, I agree with Gene. I think that should be.
And that just makes, and now you think about it, that puts an even bigger target in conference on the Ohio States of the world's backs, because now the Penn States, the Michigans, the Indianas, all these schools know I just got to win the conference.
Right. Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I can, we can schedule really great out of conference games at the beginning of the year because I just got to win the conference.
Like, all right, let's just take this past year. Like, for all the Indiana fans that get upset that, Ohio State took something away from them.
Ohio State beat them?
Even Ohio State beat them. But if Indiana would have beat Ohio State, there was no guarantee Indiana was going to the playoff. Like, I don't care what anybody says.
Right. Correct.
There's a guarantee Ohio State's going to the playoff if they win the Big Ten. There's no guarantee Indiana's, because then it gets down, because then it goes to a room. It goes to a room and
Indiana's not getting in over the second. No, Florida would have got in.
They're going to be like, yeah, I don't really care that Indiana won the Big Ten. It's Indiana.
They only played 6 games.
They're not going to look at, how good those 6 games were. They're going to look at it like, or how good of the season was, been like, it's Indiana.
Especially if Michael Penix still gets hurt.
I mean, that might be, Cincinnati might actually, might be the chance if they're going to put anybody in, it'd be like, we'd rather have Cincinnati in here than Indiana.
Right. So, they played a full schedule. Yeah, I don't think, no, I mean, I don't see any place where they would have got in over, a second SEC team or, like you said, maybe Cincinnati gets in over them. Probably, I mean, I think Cincinnati sometimes carries more weight, throughout the United States in college football than what Indiana does.
Well, maybe Oklahoma at that point. I mean,
or Iowa State.
Yeah, they might come back and be like, well, we're just going to give them
Right. Like, I'd rather the, conference champion that, like you said, Oklahoma, maybe Iowa State's kind of similar to Indiana
Yeah.
as far as who they are. So,
But yeah, so but that
if
helps.
this was in place, Indiana gets in the playoff.
Yeah. So that actually helps them. So now Ohio State might be playing two big time marquee things, but they still have a bit. They've dropped conference games that they shouldn't have lost, and now it's been like, those years Penn State when they beat them in 16. Well, now Penn State's definitely in the playoff.
Right.
Ohio State doesn't just. Maybe Ohio State will get one of the at-large,
sure,
but Penn State's in.
And they would have got an at-large in 2016 and probably would have had the same result because their offense wasn't very good.
Yeah. So no, you're absolutely right. For schools like Ohio State, Alabama, which Nick has talked about, he's actually been one of the few coaches that have actually kind of come out at different times and said that he wished that they did scheduling a little different in the SEC, and that he's kind of wished that they would go to a 9-game conference schedule and stuff like that. And you might not get, chicken crap Saturday for the SEC because they might be like, well,
it doesn't matter.
We can play somebody else. We can actually schedule in.
That helps them get an extra bye week, though.
Yeah, it's true. But, to somebody like Alabama, he might say, well, playing playing two good schools earlier in the season than maybe playing a Coastal Carolina or somebody else that, instead of just this garbage Division II team,
right?
That's more beneficial to me getting ready for a playoff than playing,
the Citadel.
Yeah, it's the Citadel at the end of the year.
Right.
So, those are actually some good points. And I think that's what we could see, and it would be a good thing, and that would be a good thing for college football. All right, so just to quickly get into, so then we had the news stuff this week.
Yeah.
And this is like the final thing, and I didn't read through all the documents, but I always love the freedom of the Information Act requests and stuff when they come out. Now, mind you, I want to start with the Kevin Warren thing, and then we'll get into President Johnson and stuff. Just because she was, I started getting, I was very lukewarm about her at first. Then, as kind of this whole situation was starting to fold in the fall, I was starting to get really, I think I like her. She seems like, she's got a good head on her shoulders. She obviously, whoever gave her information, at first I'm wondering, I'm like, somebody must have given her good information not to necessarily start a fight with the football team. But now it seems like, right from the beginning, she was full blown, like,
she was fighting for it.
But we'll get into her situation. So the Kevin Warren thing, Letterman Row, Columbus Dispatch, all these places that made the Freedom of Information Act. If Ohio State didn't turn over that one page that Kevin Warren thought it was just a man-made, it was just a made-up thing.
That they were lying how much the parents wanted them to play.
Would the media have ever known, like, one piece of paper gets lost in the or whatever, like, you could easily hide that and dump everything else and just not that one. But Ohio State released that one too. It's like, screw it. F that guy and
hashtag fire Kevin Warren's back.
We saw how much we saw how much our fans hated him to begin with. Let's throw some more. Let's throw another log on that fire.
Yeah.
So
throw some gasoline on that bitch. Yeah.
So he was. That was interesting to me. That was like the final thing for G. It's like, you know what? Throw that one in there too. Screw that guy.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's a bad look. I mean, who goes out and says that? Like, that's their initial thought, is this is a lie, that the school is manufacturing this. These parents don't care if they're playing or not.
And why can't I think of it? The previous president or the previous commissioner,
Delaney.
Delaney, for as dumb as Delaney, I mean, Delaney made some boneheaded decisions as his tenure as the commissioner, but
he loved Pasadena so much. He wanted Ohio State to be in Pasadena than the playoffs.
He would have been a much better figurehead, though. He would have handled the situation so much better because he would have at least understood the fan bases within the conference, which Kevin Warren obviously does doesn't understand. Like, he would have understood that, nah, that's not man-made. That's
Ohio State.
That's our Ohio State. And, like.
Yeah, it's not even fathomable. Like, I can't believe that's what he said. Like, and of all things, like, it could have been like, Kevin Warren understands how upset they are, but this is for the safety of everybody. Like, at the end of the day, if you really believed and there was science to support that this is for everyone's safety, we don't want kids dying just to play football, even though it's their choice. That's the game they love. You got to understand sometimes, hard decisions have to be made and it's not safe for people to be out there. I still would have been upset. Like, it's hard to get on board when you love football so much, but this flat out, like, he thinks that we're lying, that the parent, that this is a lie, that it's manufactured by the school.
Yeah.
How insulting.
Yeah. We said back in the day that they could have played this if they would have just been more transparent about this, even if they ended up still canceling the season, if they would have just been more transparent of why their decisions,
right?
You would have had a much different, you would have still had a lot of people upset, but it would have taken a lot of the air out of the balloon because, we get it, but sometimes we have to be the ones that make the tough
I got to make a hard decision for you some of the time.
And, I'm the commissioner of this league and you can say all this stuff, but, there's a lot of issues. There's the medical issues. There's liability issues.
Myocarditis, right?
Yeah,
there is some sort of evidence that this is something that could actually come back and hurt you later in life.
We have doctor evidence. Here's our doctor evidence.
Right.
So he's like, I have to make the decision that's best. We voted, the overwhelming, it was 9-3, wasn't the original vote. The overwhelming majority of the conference wanted the, postpone to at least the spring. So, we got to do what we got to do.
Right. And this is temporarily postponed. We will revisit in 1 month when more evidence has come out and we will, come up with a game plan on when we're going to roll out a season at that time.
Yeah.
But no, he said season's canceled. This will not be revisited. I'm not taking any questions. See you later.
Yeah.
Peace out for a month.
And then he alienates, not even mention the stuff they did to, and people can say what they want about Nebraska, and, the modern college football era. Nebraska's a very loved college football team, and, they have a unbelievable, great fan base.
Unbelievable backing.
And, so you alienated the hell out of them, which, they got power. And then, okay, well, Ohio State's that's fake. Like, that's fake news. They're not, their parents aren't really upset. Well, like, what the heck was that? Like,
I know. And I'm like, exactly. Like, the things like, they pretty much said no to Nebraska. You're not going to like flex your muscles on us. And then you had those idiots on ESPN one, that used to play for the second best school with the winged helmet, saying that they need to kick their ass out of the Big Ten and they need to apologize or they get kicked out. Like, yeah, I don't, what a just colossal mess that guy made.
Yeah. So,
and I can't believe that he made it past, to this point.
Yeah. And we'll probably talk about this as more shows go on, but what is going to be all the lasting effect? Now moving into President Kristina Johnson, her first thought, her text message to Gene when they are going to postpone is there any way we can go independent? And we've kind of talked about where are dominoes, what are falling, what are not falling. So he wants they're hardcore back in name, image, and likeness now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've always said if there's a super league, most likely in a new iteration, the kids are going to get a much bigger piece of the puzzle, of the pie in that type of world. So I'm wondering if this was really a thought process, we make a lot of money in the Big Ten, but, if there was only so many schools and it's just we said 48, 32, whatever, if it's an NFL size at 32.
Football goes on without the Big Ten. And Ohio State's still going to make
Ohio State's going to be in
pile of money.
And, we didn't talk about this when it came, but and when this whole European Super League thing was being discussed over a couple of weeks ago for soccer, ESPN did this little fun thing where, should college football do it? And every one of their people that said, every one of them had Ohio State in it. So
yeah,
Ohio State's going to be in that.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially with how Ohio State's shown that. I mean, just over the last year, Ohio State has said without saying we are bigger than the Big Ten.
Yeah, and yeah, maybe can we go independent? I mean, when I saw that, I'm just like, wow, that's for her not to have. It wasn't even officially the president of the university. I mean, she was hired, but her first day on the job wasn't yet.
Right.
So she wasn't actually. That was her first opinion on it. That can we go independent? Like who says that?
And
you don't.
And I don't know if it's like that means she gets it for what football means to Ohio, but she definitely understands, the importance of the kids being able to play a sport they love, that she felt like it could be done, that she knew other teams were doing it. And she felt like, well, if other teams are doing it, Ohio State should be allowed to do it.
Yeah. So yeah, I really liked that. And I really think her head she's got a good head on her shoulders when it comes to this. I'm not saying that, if she has to make a tough decision someday down the road.
Oh, God, I hope I don't see her on a press conference suspending or firing Ryan Day.
But, I'm
accepting his resignation.
I'm sure she could do it. I'm sure, the love a lot of people have for her that would go out the window that day. But maybe, Gene's taking a lot of flack from a lot of people. Some of it's warranted he kind of messed up the 2011, 2012 situation, getting the bowl. I mean, they would have won the national title in 2012. I mean,
yeah,
we didn't have that bowl ban. And I think Gene should have played a much harder ball with the NCAA. I mean, like, we're at the beginning of the 2011 season when they were in a transition. They probably deep down knew Luke was not going to end up being the permanent head coach unless he really super impressed them. That he should have went to the NCAA and just said, look, going into the season, we're going to take a bowl ban, and we're not going to hear anything else from you because our head coach that wouldn't still be here is gone. That was supposedly the cause of the situation.
Half my players were suspended for a good portion of the year.
So, I mean, we'll take the bowl ban, but this is it. Like, and you're not going to do any more crap to us, or, I mean, we'll sue you. I mean, I don't know. Like, get at that point, get lawyers involved.
Yeah.
Like, this is big enough a punishment for what the players did. The coach lied. He lost his job over it, and all the players that are supposedly in question that, mind you, you guys let play in the Sugar Bowl, that, they are all no longer, they're all suspended. And, so to us, I think us adding a bowl ban for this year and maybe 2 years probation or whatever, I think that's good enough.
Well, didn't Posey, I mean, wasn't it so ridiculous? Because it was 4 games, and didn't he end up being suspended until the last 2 of the season?
Yeah. So
I wonder what would have rolled downhill about Terrell Pryor if he said, okay, I'm taking a 4-game suspension. I mean, what made that guy just up and say, all right, I'm not coming back to college. I'm getting ready for the NFL. Because that's before they did that stuff then.
Yeah. I don't know. Who knows what was out there?
What would have came out about TP?
I mean, we've heard some rumors and different things, and some of them, players. I know one of the players that's one of the coaches on this team wasn't always a big fan of his.
Yeah.
And, Laurinaitis has kind of hinted at a couple things on their radio show that, I think that there might have been other stuff there. There might have not been other stuff there, but you know what? Terrell Pryor decided that
Well, you're right. Gene should have said, hey, you know what? Jim Tressel lost his job because of this. Half our team suspended.
And that's
we got our bowl ban this year.
And that was a team that lost 1 game the year before and went to the Sugar Bowl that would have been very easily could have played for the national title in 2011.
I mean, they had a lot returning.
If Tressel comes back and all those players are not suspended, yeah, that's a national championship caliber team. And
your offense is definitely good enough to get there.
Yeah, so I think that and that's where Gene should have died on that hill, and and he should have publicly died on that hill, and but he didn't, and I think Gene's taken a lot of flack since then, and a lot.
We are 10 years removed from it too.
Yeah, and but I don't know what kind of presidents, I don't know how much, that they it was Guy was still
Gordon
president.
Guy was
Guy was still president. I don't know how much he let Gene really flex his muscles. I don't think Michael Dre let him flex his muscles at all.
Joke.
And, maybe now he can flex his muscles and that she'll let him. And that, and that could be, maybe it's a different gene. He knows the behemoth that he runs, and that it's like, hey, you guys need us more than we need you.
Right.
And we've always said that, and some media guys have poo-pooed on that, and I've always disagreed with that. But like, no, being like, the reason why Fox gave the Big Ten is if Ohio State ain't in the Big Ten ain't getting that contract from Fox. They're not getting that contract from ESPN. That's as much as ESPN likes to, as much as ESPN at times likes to crap all over Ohio State, it seems like if Ohio State's in a different conference, if suddenly they went to the Big 12, well, what do you think that contract is coming? Oh, Ohio State's with Texas and Oklahoma, yeah. Open checkbook, and here's the money.
And I know there's so many complex things that go into, your TV rights, what you could have paid, what not. I just can't imagine with the loss of revenue from, what they weren't getting in ticket sales, that if Fox would have came back to Ohio State and said, hey, we still want you guys. We want to put you on TV. This is what we're paying you, though. We're not paying you that. Like, I just can't imagine Ohio State wouldn't have, taken something,
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that I always thought that it was kind of.
It is very complex.
I thought that they kind of pushed some of that off onto the media because they knew that they could push it off on the media and be like, well, the contract says we can't do that. As much as these media conglomerates all compete against each other, they also make deals with each other, in that I think if ESPN and Fox, with knowing the loss of revenue both of them were looking at in the face, they would have both sat down and been like, all right, these 20 schools want to play and the rest don't, so let's just kind of
the ESPN would have paid for Ohio State and BYU to play on a Thursday.
Yeah. And and Fox to have Alabama and whoever play on. Yeah. I think all the networks would have come into some sort of agreement for a year and been like, we can split this up because at least we're getting some. I mean, they all took such a hit last year, especially in the spring when they lost all their pro sports. Yeah. They got clobbered. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, some of them were if there was no college football season, we're on the verge of collapsing completely.
Oh, yeah.
And like that. So yeah, I think that the media companies would have made some sort of deals to make sure that they were getting some revenue in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. But yeah, I just thought it was something interesting. I liked what I saw from her. I like that she said she was mad about Warren, saying that, and she never met them. Like, that's a pretty serious, that ticks me off, or whatever, however she worded it, that's a pretty serious charge. And like, yeah, it's crap.
Did you see the letter that the parents penned yesterday or the day before? Well, the last words they say to Kevin Warren is like, it's like, communicate, talk to us in the future, blah, blah, blah. Last two words, do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Do better.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's great. But yeah, so it's just a lot of interesting things. It was funny that we got actually a lot of cool little things that at least we could throw something together this week. Cause again, we're just in this weird time.
Yeah.
It seems like June will pick up some just because they're going to have they'll have a lot of players on campus. So we'll have a lot of recruiting stuff that probably need to go through June. But
did you read any of the emails though, from the fans that were freaking out?
Yeah.
Oh my God. You would have thought Columbus was on fire. I mean, if you don't play this year, the Ohio State will never be back.
Yeah.
That never crossed our minds.
And I talked about that in the fall too. I mean, Ohio State will weather this storm. If somehow they don't play football this year, they might lose some kids that are getting ready to leave school, and they might go play for other schools, but they're not going to. These schools already had, they thought we were going to lose all, the people that thought we were going to lose all of our recruits, all these classes are all, Alabama's class is about filled too. They can't just come in and be like, well, we're taking those 5 kids from Ohio State. And everybody else had full classes too. So, I mean,
yeah,
it was never going to happen.
And I know, I do know in the text message though, they had talked about, that they lost a commit. because of that. Which I'm trying to think, who was that? Do you remember?
We did lose somebody. I can't remember his name, but yeah, we did lose. But I don't know.
I have to research it. And I'm sorry, because I just thought about that line again, that we had a decommit because of this, and I can't even think who decommitted last year.
It might have been one that had an official.
Well, if anyone wants to let me know who decommitted, that'd be greatly appreciated, because I can't remember.
I think we did lose somebody, but I don't remember his name either. But I think we'll get on out with that. So
good show. It was a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Like you said, I'm glad we had this week that, we had some good topics that we could just sit down and discuss, because it is that slow time. I think though, with 50 recruits coming in next month, that we should hopefully have some good information, good things to talk about in
recruiting.
June.
Definitely looking forward to seeing what name, image, and likeness brings us. If the state gets that passed by July 1st, that will be very interesting, and that could who knows what that helps with finishing out the 22 class and moving forward for the 23 class. So,
like I said, you gotta be in the front of it, because it's right over the hill. You can't fall down that hill. You got to go over it.
And like I said, I think there's going to be very Wild Westy here in the first couple of years of this. So if you're going to be in the Wild West, you might as well enjoy it before they rain in on your parade and come then with the rules and regulations, because the rules and regulations from the NCAA will be typical of the NCAA. It's going to be following all this, and it's not going to be leading out in front. It's going to be following.
Yeah.
So
go get yourself one national title. Yeah. Do what you got to do.
So. All right.
Well, thank you everyone for stopping in today at the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added. And please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.